Hey everybody, this is Jason Height, and I wanted to show you guys um, kind of my design process and talk about why I do this type of design process on. I do a lot of different uh, product design, but for this particular piece, I just made this really cool figure that I'm happy with, and I wanted to have some kind of a environment like around him. So I start doing that by basically just taking a picture of the figure in Photoshop and then shrinking them down and printing them out on 8.5 by 11, and then split it into four quadrants here, so I can kind of have a general layout. And then I just go in and start exploring with shapes. I have a really loose idea in my brain of what I want, but it's not very formed. So just doing this gives me an exploration. And if you notice, um, the quadrants, uh, the way I have it split really is a big proponent to this, as you'll see when I go to the next step. But I think I'm using what pencil did I use? I did this last night, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. I use a Tombow Mono 4H pencil, and I like these pencils because they're nice and hard, so I can smear my hand all over and it doesn't smudge, and it's light. So I don't need anything super heavy. I'm just trying to get a general idea of where my direction's going to go and where my shapes are for this background piece. Um, and I want it to complement him. And as you notice, I'm drawing this really big, complex figure next to him that is kind of overshadowing him. So you'll see how I deal with that in Photoshop in my next section. But primarily I use sketches. I think it's funny that the camera's not moving. I'm moving my piece because I'm working on that side. So my arm keeps pushing it forward, so it's moving a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just roughing out shapes. And I had a plan like midway through. I was like, oh, I'm going to try this. And sometimes I'll just experiment with those two halves. But I know I decided early on that this figure to the side here, this woman here getting serviced by some creature is way too big and overshadowing the sculpture itself. I wanted to complement, not to overshadow. But I had an idea, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to finish out this idea. And then now I've got it, I scanned it, and now I've brought it into Photoshop here. And the first thing I do is kind of block out the character, so I just want to arrange what I've drawn here and flip the sides. That's why I split it down the middle, because I like to mirror things. I like symmetry for biomechanical stuff for some reason, or I just like symmetry. But anyway, so now you can see I'm shrinking her down. I'm trying to figure out, because she's drawn on that kind of angle, it just gives some more interest. And it's a smaller detail on the side. I didn't want her to overshadow the main figure in the front. So now I'm just playing around with colors. I mean, not colors. Just the heaviness of the line. What I do is I will multiply a layer. I'll duplicate a layer after I've adjusted the contrast and brightness, and then I'll multiply it over another layer of the exact same thing, and that will give me a harder line. So now I'm going in with just grays and whites and blacks and just trying to get more, try to blend her in here and try to make it work. And again, I'm working kind of symmetrically. So I only need to worry about one side, and then I'll just flip it to the next. And then now I'm just giving her a little bit of highlight just to kind of accentuate and really delineate where the details are. This isn't going to be, the sketch is really a means to an end. It's more of a roadmap for me. I'm not going to follow this super tight. It's more just like, what about this? What about this shape? And then I like to further explore when I'm in Zbrush, because I'm going to do this in Zbrush eventually. And the way I see it is I just need a rough guide. My wife says always practice safe design. meaning that if I get into ZBrush and I don't have a design or some kind of direction to move in, it's really hard. So just by having something, it's a big help. And me just exploring ideas kind of gets my brain ready to be like, okay, well, this is kind of what we're going for. If I were to just start cold in ZBrush and try to do this design or do a frame around them, I don't know what I would be doing. So exploring in 2D is always, a really good idea. I did the same thing for the figure, and I'll show some images of that at the end of the video, where I did some sketch explorations before I really started sculpting him. And if you look at the sketches and you look at him, he's got bits of everything in the sketches. And oh, I was listening to a podcast. He's got bits of everything. Anyway, okay, so now I'm just laying in some harder lines to really bring in the shadows, and there's a funky skull up top. And now I've duplicated it and just put it on the other side, and there we go. So now it looks pretty good, and now I'm bringing the figure back in and just kind of give me a loose idea on how this is going to play out. And oh, I went and got the original figure because he looked a little nicer. That was a copy of a scan, so this one was my actual screenshot from my 3D model. So I threw him back on there because he's a little more. So this is not by any means perfect, and it's not finished. And there, I'm looking at it now, and I'm seeing like the bottom kind of sucks. There's really nothing going on down there, and I want something. It either needs to be longer or something else needs to be going on down there. But oh, and I wanted to play with the background, so I'm just going in and making like so I'm thinking that background is going to be cast in some kind of translucent resin with a light behind it. And I'm done. And this whole exercise, it was about an hour for the sketch and about 45 minutes for the photoshopping. So here are the sketches I did for the hierophant before I actually started sculpting. The first one I think I did, that was a couple of years ago actually, just a head study, and then I sculpted the whole headpiece. I changed his face completely, but I kept pretty much the rest of him. So I like to think that the kind of fleshy and bone and veins would be underneath that mask. He's kind of got like tubing on his face and stuff. So underneath that, you would find all, his anatomy there. So the second sketch was when I decided I wanted to finish and do his whole body. And as you can see, I didn't even finish the sketch. It's just kind of rough. And I really only need to do one arm, one leg. I'm kind of lazy sometimes. And I'm just trying to, I knew I wanted him to be, just humanoid shaped, but I just wanted to work out some of the details. And if you look at the chest especially, it's pretty close to what I did. The chest and the abdomen are pretty close. But then I changed things on the third sketch. I even went with a different head. I just was feeling I wanted to try a different character. But I really liked his back arms, these big giant kind of blades that can come out of those arms. So I took that idea and sort of ran with it. And so the third sketch is kind of another character, which I'm calling Azazel or Azrael. I'm not sure yet. But I borrowed that and kind of went with it in the final sculpture. So that gives you a general idea of kind of my workflow is in terms of I need to have a roadmap before I start, but I like to have enough space on my roadmap to be able to explore. As you can see, like the legs are pretty different, and I looked at a lot of anatomy too, and I wanted to kind of trace human anatomy in the biomechanical design itself. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.